name is Sven Ullrich. I'm the executive chef at the Hyatt Regency in Sydney, and I'm talking to the famous Renae today from Where to From Here about sustainable seafood in our restaurant, and of course, where does luxury travel go from here?
Hello, my name is Renae Leith-Manos. Welcome to this podcast, Where to From Here, featuring conversations about luxury travel and how it's changing in every pocket of the globe. Hi guys, today we're going to Sydney, which is of course my hometown, and to the Hyatt Regency, and we're talking all things seafood and sustainable seafood with the amazing chef Sven Ullrich. I'm really excited to have him on the show, and of course I'm always excited to go to Sydney. Sven, how are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm so excited. It's a
Yeah.
mouthful, isn't it? Chef and Sven.
It is. I'm not the first to struggle with
No,
that.
you're not the first. I know.
But look, you've worked all over the world. I mean, in luxury hotels from Tokyo to Hong Kong, Germany, and the US. What brought you to Sydney?
Yeah, you know how it is. I can't really say that it was the love of cooking. It was more the love of my life, being my wife.
Oh.
That is from Australia. She's from Melbourne originally. And she said, why don't you come to Australia? And you know what? I have to be honest. I really haven't thought so much about Australian produce. I didn't really know about Australian seafood. And I thought, okay, give it a shot. If, the love is there, right? You're going to follow wherever love leads you. And here I am now, 7 years later, and absolutely love Australia and love especially Sydney.
Well, now how did you meet? Is she in luxury hotels as well, or?
Yeah, so we met at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, and she, yeah, I know, isn't it?
So romantic, so romantic.
Like a movie, really. But look, she's in the kitchen. She's a chef as well, and I think it takes someone to understand our work habits and what we're going through. So it was really brilliant, and we worked in the same fine dining. It was called Peacock Alley back then, run by a Michelin-starred French chef, and we both worked in that restaurant. And all of a sudden, she came over one day and said, "Hey, what's your name?" And a bit of corny lines, corny pickup lines. But here we are, 27 years later, happily married. So.
Congratulations. And who does the cooking at home with two chefs under one roof?
Questions I get asked most of the time, Renae. You know what? It's a change. I have to say, during the week, she does it mainly, especially for our adult kids. I always call them kids, but they're not really kids anymore. But on the weekends, I like to do it. I really do. I love a bit of braising. It's very different. It's nothing like here. Here I have pressures of budgets and pressure of, food cost and time pressures. But at home, it's okay. I'm going to throw the roast in the oven. I'm going to take it slow, have a glass of wine while I'm watching it cook. I enjoy it. I really do. So I have to say, on the weekends, I'm the one cooking.
Fantastic. And tell me, I mean, you're touching on the kitchens within luxury hotels. We've seen it all in the movies, and I've heard quite a few stories from my chef friends. Is it as stressful as they say, with chefs throwing steaks at walls and shouting and sweating? And talk us through it. What is it really like?
Look, the industry has changed a lot, Renae. Okay, look, I started in 1988 my career, and back then the slapping of the apprentice chef as I was quite normal. It's funny when I tell my chefs now, I got actually still hit behind the head when something wasn't right, and I got called into the cool. I know, but it's not really terrible. It was the times back then, right? It was how
it was normal then.
I'm not saying it's better or worse. I just felt it was very different. And now, look, you see it on Gordon Ramsay's, right? On the cooking shows. But I have to say, in the luxury hotels, it's not really like this anymore. It's maybe in some freestanding restaurants who have a lot of publicity avenues and areas, but in a normal environment, look, it's a stressful environment, absolutely, and we do have to sometimes raise our voices and yell just to get heard, because the background noises are so loud. But no, it's really much more subdued than it was 10-15 years ago.
And has the technology really changed things? I mean, I know now the waiter can put it into a computer, into a tablet, that then spits out in the kitchen. Has all of that technology in terms of ordering and communicating between the guests and the chefs really made things easier for you as a chef?
Look, sometimes I wish we can go back in time and go back to the little handwritten note from the server, right, that comes in. But look, it has its benefits, absolutely. It definitely speeds
Mm.
up the service. Look, we also have paging systems now, right, to get the server. So there's just a little number we press on the kitchen pass that says, okay, server 4, your main course is ready. Please come immediately. So there is a lot of positives that came out of it, absolutely. And look, in the past, I have to be honest, Renae, you couldn't read sometimes the handwriting. Right, the server put in a kitchen docket, and you're like, is it one rabbit or two rabbits? So
Is it veal
so
or
things
chicken?
yeah, I know. So things have eased up a little bit, luckily.
Yeah, yeah. And how does the luxury hotel landscape in Europe and the US compare to Australia, having had the experience that you've had?
Yeah, look, oh, that's a pretty big question.
Mm.
I have to say, European luxury is still very, very elite, and it's still very classy. There's luxury travel in Europe. I always find, and the luxury hotels that I've worked in and I've been, it's they always go the extra mile. When you
Yeah,
compare that to the US, it's a little bit. Look, I have to be careful what I'm going to say. Whoever watches this feels maybe offended by it, but the Americans are a little bit back when it comes to back to service. They're not
mm.
quite there. You tip them well. I mean, my gosh, you really have to fork out deep to get all the gratuities paid, but the service level is not really there. It's those little
Really?
little bits where your water glass, when it's half empty, you get topped up, right? When you go to the toilet and your napkin gets folded again over your chair when you come back, right? In a
Beautiful.
luxury sector, that's the things you really appreciate and you feel you paid for. And I
Yes.
have to say, I miss that a little. It wasn't like this in the United States, even though they were really famous hotels. I worked at the Bel Air in Los Angeles, which is well known. It had a really high ranking, Waldorf Astoria,
Absolutely.
but they never really, lived up to the expectations, I find. So to answer your question, sorry, in a very long-winded
No,
way,
no.
but I think Europe is a bit different. It really has that finesse, that extra touch.
And Australia, how does Australia compare to them both?
Australia is right up there, absolutely.
Yeah,
I feel like we're trying really, really hard, and
yeah,
I think we have so many international travelers, and I think that's our big challenge in Australia. We have to please the Asian clientele, we have to please the European, we have to please the American, and they're very different. They have very,
they're very
very
different.
different
And even that
expectations.
within Asia itself, I mean, Chinese culture is vastly different to Indonesian culture, which is different to, Thai
Absolutely.
culture. Mm.
And you don't have that as extreme as we have, where we have to really stretch ourselves in so many different areas.
Mm.
Certain things you get offended in the Asian culture, right? While it's common practice in the European. So I think we're working really hard at it. I have to say, I think we have spectacular, beautiful hotels here. And
Yes.
we're really, really up there with the best, for sure.
Well, talk to us about sustainable seafood. I mean, is that up there with the best? And how much progress have we made in Australia? And how far is there to go to be truly as sustainable as we can be?
Look, sustainable. I'm glad you asked that question. I was waiting for that, Renae. This is the main topic, right? We're going to chat about today. No, it's a big topic. It's a responsibility, and we are a big hotel. We're not a freestanding restaurant. We deal with a lot of clients here. We have high volume. So for us to buy sustainable seafood, I think is the most important thing to do, because I have, like I said, young adult children who want to have seafood down the road, and our oceans are fish empty.
Mm.
So we have to go to sustainable farming, and and I think Australia is leading the way in a lot of sustainable farming, and there's now a lot of education that gets done to our consumers. We understand now that we have to ask the question, where's that fish coming from? How
Yes.
has it been delivered? And I think we're pretty good at it. Look, and that's, hopefully you've seen it in our restaurant. We highlight the vendors that we work with. We highlight the companies because they are doing the right thing, and they really have the future in their minds. They don't just harvest fish for today and tomorrow. They harvest fish or raise fish for the next centuries to come.
Mm. I mean, globally, are we really going to run out of fish in the ocean at some point? Is that a possibility? I mean, fish to eat, I
Absolutely.
mean.
Absolutely. I mean, there's
Yeah.
multiple amazing documentaries on Netflix, on other
Mm.
channels, where you really, understand it's a vicious circle. Okay, it's a
Yes.
circle of plastic in the ocean, is a circle of overfishing, is a circle of being so pedantic on what we eat and so wasteful, right? We the caviar industry back in the days, they really just killed the sturgeons to remove the caviar eggs and then put them back in the dead animal, the dead fish back in the water. I mean, it's crazy what we did as humans, not really think about it. And I think now I want to really spark a bit of conversation. When you look at our menus, I leave it up to the guest to decide if it's wild caught or sustainable farm. I can't only put wild fish on the menus. We don't have enough. To answer your question, yes, Renae, we will run out of fish.
And wild fish, are wild fish much more expensive, sorry to interrupt you, than the ones that are farmed? I mean, excuse my ignorance, I don't know. I'm interested.
It is much more. And it's also based on seasons, right? When you want to have wild fish, you cannot have it the entire year around. We change our menu every quarter because we have to stay with the seasons of the fish. They have times, of course, when they lay their eggs. So then there's no harvesting allowed. And that's when you look at some of the companies we work with, like, for example, Skull Island prawns that you might have seen on the menu. They are only harvest for a 6-month period, just to make sure that the prawns rejuvenate themselves again, and there's enough for the next season. And that's why we want to support those companies. They're working hard at it, and it's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Yeah. And to your reference, read the documentaries on Netflix, many of which I have watched. How do you ensure that wild fish don't have plastic in them? Because these documentaries, I don't know. I don't know what I see on TV, which is never reliable. But they say that every piece of fish has a piece of plastic in it that's wildly caught. What's your take on that?
It is. Look, this is the beautiful thing about wild caught, right? You don't know exactly where the fish is from. You don't know exactly if somebody has just polluted the water in any way. So this is the risk we're taking. But yeah, I mean, there's scary things out there. I hear that in a lifetime, we consume a credit card worth of plastic in our human bodies from
Say that again. Just say that again.
No, I don't want to say it again.
Yeah, say it again, because it's a good quote.
It's in a lifetime of a human, we consume a credit card worth of plastic just through eating contaminated fish that has swallowed plastic. And of course, that's scary, right? That's really, really scary. And no, we cannot influence it. We can, of course, have a much better grip on the sustainable farming because we know what waters they live in, we know what they're fed. But look, we can't. We have to move forward with both ways. We have to keep the oceans clean. We have to make sure that there's a monitored amount of fish taken out of the ocean. And at the same time, we have to make sure there's companies out there who are certified, who really are monitored. You might have heard about the ASC and MSC certification, the Maritime Stewardship Council, MSC short, who have independent auditors come to the farms and monitor that everything is done in a sustainable method.
Wow. And how do you, as a chef and as a seafood expert, might I say, ensure that you and your family avoid the consumption of these plastics in fish? Will you not eat fish from certain places around the world, or?
Look, I think my number one recommendation, Renae, would always be to go to the local fish butcher, right? Like to the fishmonger. The supermarket fish is definitely mass production, right? And
right.
This is, you have to get away from it. It's a pity because it's hard to find butchers now for good meat. It's hard to find a great seafood monger. But this is what be always my first plea, is to find them, support them, because they're getting the seafood through the correct sources. And if you have someone who's as passionate about where the fish comes from, then you will also, can feel good about it and really minimize. I don't think you can avoid it, but I think you can minimize just eating fish that has been contaminated.
Absolutely. And tell me about veganism, because I did a lot of reading on you, and I know that you were quite passionate about it at one stage, and of course it dovetails into sustainability. Is this trend plateauing here in Australia? Are you seeing it on the rise? Are foreign people still looking for it?
Look, that's tough questions here today for me. Look, I feel it's definitely, I wouldn't say on the rise, but I think it's been steady. I think people want to do the right thing, and people feel that by eating plant-based, they're not polluting the planet. They're really not harming animals, which is not quite, or eating healthy on top of it, which is not. I couldn't 100% agree to that. There's a lot of bad plant-based product out there because they're trying to make it taste like meat for some crazy reasons. I don't understand why. But you look at
Yes.
the ingredients, and there's 20 different ingredients in it, and that's not the right thing. But I just feel, Renae, my main plea is that we have to find a balance, right? And the
Yes.
balance is, back in the days we had the roast on the weekends, right? We
Sunday
have to
roast.
go. Correct, the Sunday roast, and there was a reason behind it. You didn't have a filet mignon every day of the week, or you have, cold cuts and sausages. We have to get a little bit away from it, and the body will appreciate it. People
Yes.
say red meat, you have to limit it. I think we have to find that balance. Meatless Mondays, have a beautiful piece of fish on a Friday, have your roast on a Sunday, and go plant-based through the other days, and you're gonna
I
feel
have
fine.
never heard it put that way, and that is so good, especially when you have a family. I have teenagers. Allocating days of the week that are vegan, that are meatless Mondays,
Correct.
fish on
And
Friday. That's
that's what
great.
that's what the body needs. Like, people always say, "Oh, never trust a skinny chef," when they see me, right? And I say, "Oh, that's one of those old-fashioned." It rubs me the wrong way, right? All my neck hair is gonna stand up when I hear that. But I say, look, the reason why I'm as a chef are privileged on it, because I know the nutritional factors, right? Do I like to
Yeah.
eat a burger one day? Absolutely. But I don't eat a burger every day because I know I'm going to get
Yes.
fat. And I have French fries, but I have them only once a week, right? Because they're good.
Yeah.
They're really tasty. So I think that's the important thing. It's the balance. And if we do
Balance.
that, we don't put too much pressure on the meat industry. We don't put too
And on the
much pressure
body.
on the seafood industry. Correct. And our fish
Yeah.
can, rejuvenate again, and we enjoyed so much more. But look, we live in a luxury world,
Yes.
no pun intended, luxury travel. But we're also very fortunate in that we have everything at our fingertips. Everything. You can have, a whiting today. You can have an octopus. You can have, everything is at our fingertips. While I feel other countries, and I'm going to have Greece in my mind, they work a little bit more, of what's available right now. Oh, today we have
Yes.
no squid. There's nothing in the ocean. Sorry, you can't have it. And there's no strawberries in wintertime because they just don't grow in winter. So don't ask for them. And I feel certain countries we have to take a little bit of a following, and really follow their lead of doing it the right way.
No, I agree. And look, I did really love coming to your restaurant within the Hyatt
Thank you.
Regency in Sydney. My
Thanks
son
for
and I came
taking out
and
the
had a
time. I know you're super
oh,
busy, so I do appreciate it.
oh, thank you for the invitation. And I have to say that both my son and I were amazed at the price. I know we're not here to talk about, but $89 for a 3-course meal with a little dessert trolley buffet and a little tapas entree buffet. I mean, you talk about overeating. We definitely overate. It was really great. It was, and in a beautiful luxury hotel. It was a beautiful experience.
Thank you. Yeah. So look, this is exactly, I'm glad you used the word experience, because this is what we
Mm.
wanted to create. I think
Mhm.
there's a lot of good restaurants in Sydney. We have fantastic
Yes.
restaurants, and we don't want to compete with them, right? Everybody is working hard to get people into the doors, but we wanted to create an experience, and really, when you come in, we wanted to not only just serve you dinner. And that's why the dessert trolley, right? You have choices.
Yes.
You come in, you can choose from it. That's why we created the little tapas table, just to have a little bit of side dishes, with your entree while you're waiting for your main course, just to get ready, have a little bit of, nibbles. Oh, I try this little bit of Parmesan cheese. And that's the whole idea. We wanted to really make sure that we highlight our vendors on the menu. Purposely, we put those logos on them because we're proud to use them, from every single vendor, from the bread company, from Iggy's, who's right here in Sydney, to
Oh, the
Pepasea,
best. Yeah, we
right?
love the Iggy's bread. In fact, my son was so excited to see that there. I'm
Oh,
like,
is
oh
it
yeah,
good?
there's Iggy's. I hardly ever eat bread, but I had some. It was gorgeous.
Good. No, I'm glad. And look,
Yeah.
we were very price conscious. I don't know how long we can hold the prices this
Mm.
low.
Yeah.
Most likely that there will come a time when we need to raise them, but we wanted people to explore it first. We wanted to get them
Yes.
into the door and say, look, tell us what you think, if we can fine tune it. And if everybody hopefully has the same great feedback as you, then we will make sure that we will raise the prices slightly. But we want to be also, don't raise prices just for the sake of it. It's just the
Yes.
seafood we buy, unfortunately, is extremely expensive.
I can
Extremely
imagine.
expensive.
How do restaurants, when you're talking about how many luxury hotels there are, let alone restaurants, how do restaurants stand out from each other? I mean, because I read a statistic that, more restaurants are going to close in Sydney because there's just too much competition. People can no longer afford to go out the way that they used to. What's your take on that, and who's going to survive, and why?
Look, I think I think everybody jumped a little bit on the bandwagon of price increases without really having to increase their prices. I feel the restaurant side, of course, suffered badly during COVID.
Yes.
And we're trying to make up for it a little bit. I almost feel it's like the airline industry, right? Who now has prices sky high for their seats that they never had before. Prior to COVID, I was able to fly to Europe for half the price that I do now. So I feel there was a sense of recuperating the actual cost again. And I don't think that's fair. I feel certain prices like flour and certain basic ingredients have gone up in price dramatically because of the Ukrainian war, right? A lot of wheat came out of there. And so these are price increases that make sense. And of course, we have to pass them on to the customer. But I feel, look, and I feel it, eating out in restaurants has gotten extremely expensive. Extremely. And our room rates, of course, we attract a luxury crowd because we, of course, provide luxury accommodation. So we're quite fortunate. But of course, the restaurant has to fight even harder to get those people into their restaurants because they don't have the accommodation factor attached to it.
Yes. When was it that the shift came within luxury hotels and the F&B quality just went right up? I mean, this was a global trend. I know it happened in London. I can remember 10 years ago in Australia, in London, when you stayed in a five-star hotel, you'd never think of eating there because the food was always below par. Whereas I would say it's the opposite now. And many locals here in Sydney, here in London, go to those restaurants as a choice within the luxury hotels, and they're some of the best restaurants in the world. So what happened to make that change?
I think you know what, it's a great question because we had to learn from the restaurants, really. I give you one example. We were sitting in our lobby in one of my hotels in the past in the US, and all of our staff went outside to get their coffee, right? And we were wondering, I said, why are they having the coffee outside in the coffee shop and not with us? And we realized we had really bad coffee. We didn't have a trained barista to frost the milk correctly, to have a beautiful local. We use Single O here, which is an amazing coffee. It's a local coffee brand, right? Who roast their own coffee. We had to learn from the restaurants, and it's no difference with the food. The guests stayed with us, but when they went for dinner, they said, "Oh, where's a good restaurant to go to?" And we said, "Oh, with us? Oh, no, thank you. We go to the local restaurant." And so we really had to learn the hard way, Renae. We really did, and said, we need to keep them in our hotel. We need to offer something. And Hyatt especially has really pushed the F&B world quite a bit to say, give people choices. Look, we have here a tapas style restaurant. We have a rooftop bar, right? We have an all around the world kind of restaurant with Jackleberry. We have the seafood restaurant. So we want to give our guests different options to dine. And I think that's when really the shift came to that we realized we have to live up to the restaurant's level of quality. Otherwise, we're not going to survive.
Right, yeah. So can you share with us some local favorite restaurants of yours in Sydney with our audience?
Yeah, look, I get that asked a lot. What is your favorite restaurant? And I
well, you're a chef, so you should know the best.
Course, but it's a little bit of the mood I'm in, right? So that of course dictates where I want to go. So do I want to be entertained? Do I want to be, like just having a great meal? So okay, you asked me for it, so you're gonna hold me accountable, right? So it's number one, I would say, on my list is Esteban. It's a Mexican high-end restaurant right off George Street. It's a hidden tuck away, almost like a speakeasy restaurant where you have to find it. It's in between McDonald's and right where Apple, the Apple shop is. And it's one of those little alleys when you go
Esteban, okay.
Esteban, yeah. And if we wouldn't be in Australia, I would be scared walking down that alley because you think you're going to get robbed and mugged. But luckily, we are in Australia, so you can walk it. And comes at the end, already you smell the charcoal. So they have a 2-story restaurant. On top is a charcoal restaurant, a bit more for sitting down. And downstairs is their little bar, like tapas style, very, very high-end Mexican. So they make everything themselves. Every tortilla is made in-house, and they have the best margaritas in town. So it's a really beautiful place to hang out with my wife and just take it slow.
Where else do you like?
Where else to go? So when it comes down to seafood, of course, I like St. Peter's, right? So that's
in Paddington.
he of course, yes, he
Oxford
of
Street,
course,
Paddington.
is petting there. He's of course the master of seafood, right? What he does with fish is unheard of.
Yes.
He air dries it, he cures it. It's like, it's crazy. It's for a chef like me, like, really, we can do that with
Yeah,
fish?
it's very creative. Yeah, I
Very
get
creative.
that. And he's opening a pub. He's taken over the pub
yes,
in Underwood Street, so that will be
yes,
opening. It's taking a long time to renovate.
and what he does is he does this nose to tail, right? You heard about that term,
Yes.
right? It really comes from the meat industry, because we're still not very big on offal in Australia, unfortunately. You know, in Europe, it's very common. We love liver, we love the kidneys. Here, not so much. But he does the whole fish, right? What he does with the skin and with the scales, it's crazy. And that's for me always an adventure when I go there. I think it's a great place to be. And then, of course, look, I love local, authentic cuisines, like when you really have a good time. Of course, our Indian, I don't mind you sometimes going to an Indian restaurant using my hands, right? Getting
Which one? Which one do you like?
So I, of course, stay close to my neighborhood. So which is a bit on the northern beaches side. It's called Urban Tatka.
Urban what?
Urban Tatka.
Okay, great.
It's in Terry Hills.
Mm-hmm.
And they really do a higher end Indian cuisine. But what I love is with them, they keep that balance of traditional and then just put this little bit of a twist on it. So and that is exciting. You know, it's a butter chicken, but you know what? He has that little bit of, he puts some light cheese in it, or he does some really crazy things where you first of all you're a bit surprised and say, oh, I don't know if that goes, but it does. It's really, really good. So that's a nice comfort restaurant where I go with friends too, and it's always comfortable. It's a good atmosphere. So it's different. It's different on the occasion, and it's always different on you know, how I feel really.
Yeah. Anything else, or they're the only ones you want to share with us?
What's the only one? Look. There's of course restaurants with a view, but look, I like all the restaurants from the Bentley Group. You know, Brent Savage and him. You know, and he has the new one now. It's King Clarence. I'm not so sure if you've been there yet. It's his first restaurant in an Asian cuisine. So he never had Asian before, and I love what he did. I really enjoy that he mixed different Asian cuisines. He mixed the Japanese. He has Thai influence. And I was a bit, ooh, let's give it a try. You know, it's not easy to mix those cuisines, but he's done a killer job. He really does, and it's right in the city center. And like I said, I've been to all of his restaurants. We had the pleasure of working together once for an event here in our hotel, and I know what true passionate chef he is, and he really, you know, Bentley is his high end, right? That's this show pony. But when you look at his other restaurants, he really does some really phenomenal job.
Wow. And what about travel? How important is it for a chef like you to get out there around the world and see trends? And where do you like to go?
Look, I think it's very important. I do, because cultures, to understand the different ethnic backgrounds, to understand why the Indians eat with their hand in certain parts, right? Why it's important for the Japanese culture, how you present it to them, right? Almost more important on how it tastes. It's crazy, and I feel I was very fortunate to travel around, but it is important. It excites me too. But when it comes down to food, I always, of course, you know, I have to separate a little bit my travel. I separate between the excitement of seeing new sites or the climate, and then of course I'd like to look at the food side, right? It's my profession. I've been doing that since I was 16. So I love going to those places where, like, it's the food is the center. And I have to say, Barcelona, for example, right, was amazing. When you go to those markets and you try the jamon and you understand why they're different, and oh my God, I thought it was only one, but no, there's different styles, and they all come from different regions. Fantastic. And Greece is big for me, right? Because there's such the Mediterranean diet is such a healthy diet. Okay,
it really is.
Olive oil. It really is, and your body feels good about it. And I think that's the one where I feel the most. Look, I go and meet my parents. They're luckily still alive every couple of years in that small little island in the Greek Cyclades. And
is that where they live?
No, they don't. No, we meet there. No, they live back in Germany, but I don't want to go to their place. It's too boring. I rather meet on a neutral ground. And there's a small little island called Milos, And that island is really, it only uses food products that are grown on the island. So nothing gets flown in. So there's no beef on the menu. They have goat. So you find goat and chicken, but there's no other meat that is not on the island on the menu. And you feel so good. I tell you, Renae, after 3 weeks.
So I don't know if you caught up with the current trend. Milos, that island, is now being hailed as the next Mykonos.
Oh, is it?
So it's about to be overrun with tourists over the next few years. Yes.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, I know.
I've been going there for 20 years and it was so unknown. Nobody knew about it. So I'm sure it's going to change. That's, of course, a problem, right? So now with more people coming, they don't have enough food anymore, food sources.
They're going to have to bring stuff in.
Correct. So
Heartbreaking.
It's a terrible circle. You know, we have to be, I know we want certain luxury things, but you know, we have to be careful that we don't leave it too big of a footprint, you know, when we leave those beautiful 100%. Little untouched islands.
100%. But look, I could talk to you all day, Sven. It's wonderful to catch up finally. But the question we ask all our guests, where to from here for you? Yeah,
where to? Me personally? Or are we looking at...
You can choose to respond in any way that you like.
In any way I like. Okay, so look, I would say, you know, education. I think, where do I go from here? It's all about education, education of our guests and of our clientele. I think that's my big mission for the next 5 to 10 years. I will stay a little bit longer in Australia. I love it here. I'm very happy with what I have, what I've been surrounded with. But I do want that people understand a little bit more about the food that they eat, and a little bit more about where it comes from, and animal cruelty. And look, there's so many topics we could talk about all day, but this is my big mission, that people hopefully never will ask for a strawberry in winter. You know, that they're happy to say, I can't wait until summer comes and I can buy strawberries again. You know, all the things that we put pressures on, we as humans put pressures on supermarkets because we demand it. And if we would not demand it, we have the biggest power in the world. If we wouldn't buy it in Woolies and Coles, they wouldn't sell it. Don't forget.
What a powerful statement. That's such a powerful statement you just made, because you're right. As human beings, we are so spoiled to our core, especially our generation, let alone our kids, because we gave them everything. And whether you want the strawberry in winter or the chicken or the, you know, farmed this, whatever, wild caught that, we just give it to them and we give it to ourselves. And we need to stop and get real about life to save the planet.
But a lot of people don't know, unfortunately, Renae. You know, I have a lot of people in the IT world, right? And they have no clue. They don't even know how fried rice is made, right? They just think it comes in a box. I buy it from my local Chinese and don't ask any questions, right? So that's why I mean it's the education process. And I think if a lot of people will do that, we will be a better planet and we will be better human beings, and we feel hopefully better about it.
Totally agree. And I just want to add to that education piece, is educating Southeast Asia about rubbish is a big one. You know, I spend a lot of time flying around the islands of Indonesia, Thailand, and it's heartbreaking. You know, GMs and hotel owners pay me to go and review their hotels and give them feedback. And I'm getting to the point where every time I'm like, forget, it doesn't matter how good your hotel is. If it's surrounded by rubbish and the ocean is full of rubbish, no one's going to come back. It's that simple. So you need to address the big picture stuff and then worry about the walls and the service and everything in the hotel, because no one will come while it's full of rubbish and little kids on streets who are like 2 and 3 years old throwing wrappers onto the ground. Unless they are told that that is not the thing to do, this is never going to end. And Southeast Asia is going to be a dump potentially in a really short, you know, period of time.
Agree. I know it's scary, isn't it? But it's so true. And it's so true.
Maybe we need to do something about that together. But it's wonderful to talk to you, Sven. I really appreciate your time. I love your cooking and your food, and I hope to meet up with you soon.
Thank you, Renae. I really appreciate it. I'm so sorry that we couldn't get it done a couple of times. Third time lucky. But I do appreciate your time. I know you're very, very busy, and hopefully they welcome you back in one of our restaurants.
Absolutely. I appreciate your time too, Sven. Take care.
Thanks, Renae. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Don't forget to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for regular travel updates. You can also hear our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.